Hi everyone, welcome to Forbes Flash. Thanks for joining us this week, and let's get started. This week, we announced our first ever list of the richest people in cryptocurrency. Those named, called the Prophets of Boom, have amassed massive fortunes in the crypto world. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is still deciding what to make of the mania. There are now nearly 1,500 crypto assets in existence, which altogether are valued at $550 billion, 31 times more than at the beginning of 2017. 41-year-old Chinese-Canadian coder CZ runs Binance, a cryptocurrency exchange. His stake in Binance and his coins give him a personal fortune worth as much as $2 billion. The prices of individual crypto coins continue to swing wildly. Bitcoin is down almost 50% from its peak, but it's safe to say that blockchain-based currency is here to stay. Some of the world's richest people, including Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, saw their fortunes drop by billions earlier this week, thanks to a plunge in the Dow. Buffett was hit the hardest. His fortune was down $5.3 billion in just one day. Of course, these billionaires will be just fine. They still rank at the very top of the richest people in the whole world. Speaking of the stock market crash, it was of course one of the biggest stories this week. But is the drop a disaster? Not necessarily. It's been largely agreed upon that the market was long overdue for a sell-off. The economy continues to look strong, despite volatility, which is likely to continue for a few weeks. The sell-off may have wiped $4 trillion from global stock markets, but the value of NBA teams isn't suffering. Every team is worth at least $1 billion for the first time ever. Worth the most is the New York Knicks, coming in at $3.6 billion, up 6% over last year. Thanks to a Federal Reserve order, Wells Fargo shares plunged 9% lower in Monday trading. The order calls to restrict growth and revamp the board of directors at the bank as a result of its major fake account scandal. This comes after the bank paid a $185 million fine to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in 2016. Continuing to look at money in the corporate world, which companies had a good week and which didn't when it came to quarterly earnings? Snap's shares soared more than 25% in after-hours trading on Tuesday after the company beat estimates for revenue and earnings for the fourth quarter and exceeded expectations for user growth. Elon Musk may have had a spectacular week with the successful launch of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy Rocket, but when it came to Tesla, the news wasn't so good. On Wednesday, the company reported a whopping $675.4 million net loss for the final quarter of 2017 and a $1.96 billion deficit for the year. Samsung Group's heir apparent Lee Jae-young walked free this week after spending a year behind bars for corruption. Next up for the executive, long-term decision-making for the company, which enjoyed record high revenue in 2017. One of Silicon Valley's biggest legal battles captivated the country this week as Google's Waymo met Uber in court over the alleged theft of self-driving trade secrets. Former Uber CEO Travis Kalanick took the stand to speak to his involvement in hiring former Google engineer Anthony Levandowski. Stay tuned to Forbes Tech for continued coverage of the trial. Joining us now is Forbes Associate Editor Alex Knapp to discuss the successful launch of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy Rocket.
On Tuesday, SpaceX made great news by successfully launching its Falcon Heavy Rocket, which is now the most powerful commercial rocket on the market. The Falcon Heavy Rocket has been in development for over 5 years. There was a lot of interest, especially back then, for an alternative rocket that could send really big payloads into space, but also send some smaller payloads longer distances. So this is going to be of interest to governments that want to send probes to the Mars, the asteroid belt, and beyond there. It is of interest for other commercial satellite companies who might want to build bigger telecommunications satellites. And it's going to be difficult to tell really how big the impact on the market's going to be because there hasn't been a rocket this powerful before. So it's going to open up demand and open up new possibilities for space. You might see uncrewed probes to the moon, to Mars, might even see a private space station. Some people have been thinking about that. This kind of rocket will make it easier to build those kinds of things because you can put so much more on it. This was the first test flight of the Falcon Heavy Rocket, and usually when you have a rocket launching for the first time, you're not going to have anything you want to lose on it. So no satellites, no commercial payloads. Typically, what companies will do is put a big block of concrete about the weight of a satellite on there. But Elon Musk likes to have a little bit more fun with what he's doing, so instead of a big block of concrete, there was a Tesla Roadster, a cherry red Tesla Roadster to be precise. On board the cherry Roadster was a mannequin dressed in one of the spacesuits that SpaceX is currently testing to use for astronauts on its Crew Dragon rocket. And also want to add that that Tesla Roadster was playing David Bowie's Space Oddity when it went up. There are also 3 cameras on board, and so there was a live stream on YouTube so you could see a car flying in space around the orbit of the Earth. So right now, after this first test flight, the first thing SpaceX is going to do is look at the data from the flight and make sure all the engineering on the flight is working. The launch did look great. Now, on the first stage of the rocket, there are 3 boosters, and these boosters are something that SpaceX is hoping to be able to reuse and use on other flights, and that brings the cost significantly down for launches. They were able to successfully land 2 of those boosters, and it was beautiful. They landed just a few hundred feet apart from each other at exactly the same time. The 3rd booster, which was the center booster, they attempted to do a landing on a drone ship and it crashed. SpaceX has had successful landings on the water before with their Falcon 9 rocket, but they haven't all been successful, so I'm sure they're going to be looking at the data from that to see what they can do to make sure they can minimize, those failed landings in the future. Next up is that the Air Force is already contracted with SpaceX to do 2 launches with the Falcon Heavy Rocket. They also have other customers that are wanting to fly, so there's already a manifest backlog built up. So once they've refined the data, they know what they're doing with future launches, they're going to start sending up payloads on behalf of their customers. If SpaceX wanted a publicity stunt, it worked. According to YouTube, over 2.3 million people watched the launch just on YouTube. And it was also broadcast on CNN and all the news networks. So there were millions of people watching this launch. And according to YouTube, it's actually their 2nd biggest live event of all time. So a lot of people excited about this rocket, excited about SpaceX, excited about seeing a car floating through space. SpaceX isn't the only commercial rocket company out there. Obviously, for decades, Boeing and Lockheed Martin have been building rockets for the U.S. government. They actually have a joint venture that does a lot of U.S. government launches. There's also Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, which has done some suborbital flights, and they're actually hoping to get astronauts into space, paying customers that you pay, you go to space, and they're hoping to do those in 2019. It's interesting, the culture around space, it's not as competitive as some other startup industries. So Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk aren't at each other's throats about the success of their companies the way you might see other Silicon Valley startups kind of hitting each other. It's a very supportive environment, and when SpaceX launched the Falcon Heavy yesterday, there were all kinds of accolades from other space companies, congratulating on successful launch and things like that. The thing about space is that although there's money to be made, there's a lot easier ways to make money than by going into space. Elon Musk told me in an interview once that if he was trying to get rich, space isn't the way you would try to do it. They're doing it because they're excited about space. They're excited about seeing each other's success. Success by one company is success for all companies. That's the culture. That's what a lot of these people in the industry believe. And so definitely a supportive environment, and they're cheering each other on with every launch.
Thank you for joining us. Tweet your feedback using #ForbesFlash, and we'll see you next week. Tune in every Friday morning, same time, same place.